Okay, so I think today we are going to look at CSS Grid since we finished with the Flexbox. So let's use our website, which is W3 School, and then CSS Grid items, as we explained the last time, is similar with the Flexbox, you understand, but that because this, as some of the developers or if you look at, I quite remember that I explained it using the one dimension and two dimension. You understand? I say that the Flexbox utilizes, horizontal and then vertical. So it looks at one dimensional element. You understand? Or vertical. You understand? Either horizontal or vertical. You understand? Which is the what we look at the flex balls, flex container, flex items, where we use justify content, align items, and the other elements. You understand? But when this CSS grid, normally, as people say, although it sounds controversial, and it also depends on where you want to use it. But since we are always looking at responsiveness, we are always going to look at either whether it is 1D or 2D, two-dimensional. You understand? So CSS grid also look at the vertical and the horizontal. So if you look at the CSS grid layout, it says that it offers a grid-based layout system with what? With rows and columns. And when you look at the Flexbox tool, it also offers you the same thing, rows and columns. You understand? The grid layout models allow developers to easily create complex web layouts. The grid layout model make it easier to design a responsive layout structure without using floats or positioning, similar to the Flexbox. So for instance, this is the header, and this is what the aside or div, depends on how, but we are looking at the div, how the boxes are arranged or the items are arranged inside the container. So here is the head. Here is the two columns, which we have these links, and we have another text here, and we have the footer. So the CSS grid will also allow you to achieve this kind of layout. You understand? So as I was talking about the difference, the grid and the Flexbox, the grid use two-dimensional layouts, understand, with rows and columns. So they added that with rows and columns. So it's what row and columns combined. But the Flexbox uses what one-dimensional layout with what either row or columns. So that is the simplest differences between the grid and the Flexbox. As similar with the Flexbox, as you know, it has a Flexbox container and Flexbox items. Grid also has the same thing. The grid has a container and it also has grid items. You understand? So the parent container element where the display property is set to grid or inline grid. If it were to be Flexbox, we say display and we say flex, right? Now, because it is a grid, we say display and write grid or inline grid or inline flex if it were to be a flex, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here is a grid container. Here is a grid container. The blue box, that's the container that we are targeting, right? So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the items. So here you see here the same thing as we did with the Flexbox, but the property changes. You understand? So look at the container, display grid, right? So if I said, let me open this, you see here we have our div, And so inside we have all the items, the children, or the grid item. Now we don't call them flex item, we call them grid items, right?
Yeah.
So here, if you target the container here, we give it what? Display grid, right? So here it's not display flex, it's what? Display grid. And we have an property which we can talk about each items in the container, how we want each item to be in the container. So normally what we look at is, for instance, if I have to copy this and then put it inside our main website, main ID. So if I say CSS Grid, and then I paste it here, right? Then I copy the same CSS, and then I paste it here, and then we observe it using our show preview. So this is what we have, right? Then I have to target my CSS, which is CSS Grid. So I can declare this and say CSS Grid, and you see that the CSS is applied, right? So this is what we have now, right? So what we did was, let me clear this for you so that you can understand why this one is there. So normally this is how it was, because you know div is a block element, right? Right?
Yeah.
Div is a block element. So for instance, if we have our container and we have a lot of divs, like 1, 2, 3, I can even add some of the div here. Maybe I can add another div, maybe up to 6, 7, 8. And I can add maybe another one and say 9, right? So now I have 9 divs. All these are the children, or we say grid items, right?
Yeah.
So by default, this is how it is arranged. A block like this way. Understand? So immediately I target the container class here, and I said display what? Grid. Now nothing happens, right? Because
Yeah.
normally when you target there, since it is a grid and it looks at the vertical way, since nothing, we are just targeting the container, we are now giving it the property that will structure these divs or these grid items. You understand? It's similarly with flex. You know, flex, because it is by default, it is row. When we write flex here, it goes what? In the row form, right? Because by
Yeah.
default, it is what? Horizontal. But grid 2 by default is like vertical. And so nothing happened because the thing is normally vertical. Wait, you understand? So what we have to add is, if it were flex, we use maybe justify content, justify items, align items. But grid also has its own properties. You understand? So in order to target them, we have something we call grid template row. These are the items. So for instance, here, these are all the items. Understand? But when I'm going through them, we see them one by one. Because if I try to explain them one by one here, it will sound like I'm repeating myself. So it's better whilst I'm teaching you, I have to show the examples, which is better. Okay, so let's look at the grid container. So the grid container display and use grid, right? So it has a lot of properties. First of all, we have to display the grid. we are telling the container that it should display grid, right? Then, or inline grid, as you know. You remember that we have inline flex. If I come here and here I say display, if I say flex, you know how it's going to happen, right? Or if I say inline flex, this is how it happens. You notice the difference, right?
Yeah.
So if I leave it flex, just flex, you see that the box maintain it what? Its width. It touches here up to the end. So it leaves a space for all these things to be able to move because I said flex. But if I say inline flex, now that empty space is not there because it's now going to take or consider all the elements which are inside and make sure it has its same width. You understand?
Yeah.
So inline flex now, these are flex, but it cannot move within it. I've squeezed it in this way. So it cannot move. But although it is flex, but it is inline flex. But if I want them to move, I want to get a space so that they can move. I can just say flex. So that I'll have, you see the space is there now. So that is similar with the same thing as if you say grid, it's the same thing. It happens like this. So if you say inline grid, you can say inline grid. You see how it is now. You understand?
Vertical.
So it's like it's vertical this way. You understand? So that is what the difference is. So normally we just use if we are not looking at this type of CSS property, we can just use the grid and nothing will happen unless we target what we want to happen. So here is the same thing. So we have a lot of them. We have align content, align items. It's similar to the same flexbox. You understand?
Yeah.
It is only in a case that it has a different name property, like maybe grid auto column, grid auto flow, grid auto row, all of this. You understand? So as I'm moving, you see them one by one. Now let's move. Okay, so look at the rows and columns. So now we are going to target the row and column. That is what it said. CSS grid tracks. We are looking at the rows and we look at the columns. So let's see some of the properties. So inside the grid container, you define the number and size of the grid column and rows. Understand? So inside this now, we look at the number of it, and then we look at the size or the width, right? So it's talking about size and number. So size and number. So we take this one and see this now its number and its size. You understand? So because we are in the container, whatever we apply, it affects all the children inside. So we have a property which says grid template columns. It defines the number, you understand, the number and width, that is the size here, width of the columns in the grid. Right? So we are talking about that. There's number and columns here. So when you see something like grid template columns, we're targeting columns and width. When you see something grid template rows, we are targeting what? Number, height, rows. You understand?
Yeah.
Columns, rows. So here columns, rows. But the difference here is that here, while it's targeting the columns, it was looking at the width. And here, while it's targeting the row, it's looking at the height.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
What about grid template area? It defines how to display the columns, which is this, and rows, which is this, using name grid items. So we shall come to that. So let's take this for the start. Understand? Which we look at the width and then columns. So when you talk about grid template columns, we look at width and columns, right? So this is the example, or this explanation is a property which defines the number and width of the columns in the grid. So what is the values? It has different values as this. We can have a fixed length, which is pixels. We can have percentage. We can have units like fraction, 1 fraction, 2 fraction, 3 fraction. So this fraction means that if you have something like 100%, then you can divide it with 1 fraction. So if we have 100%, you want to divide it with 2 fractions, meaning you have 50%. I understand?
Yeah.
So, and then if you have something like auto, maybe you set the word first column, because when you talk about, we are dealing with columns, right? So you set the first column to be auto, second column to be auto, and third column to be auto. So for instance, let me demonstrate it for you to see here. So let's look at the fixed length. Let's look at this length. Targeting what? Grid template columns. So here, if you come here, these are our main items, right? So I already said targeted the container and said display grid. So now I'll see if I'm going to look at the columns, because you know how columns works, right? So here I said grid templates, columns, right? So if I say grid template column, for instance, if I said I want, give me 200 pixels, what happened? You see that all the boxes have 200 pixels, but with what? Width. So the height is not affected, right? Because this column only applies to the columns. So that's why it gives you these boxes. How we know column is vertical, right? But to get the width is to get the width, we use what? This width. The distance from here to here is the width, right? But here from here to here is the height. But when you talk about column, in order to get the width, we look at this from here to here. Understand? So it's like you are reversing it. Columns deal with width. You understand? Columns deals with width. So like columns always go with width. You understand? So rows goes with height. You understand? So when you see I wrote grid template what? Columns, I am looking at what? The width. You understand? Though what I'm applying is what? The columns. This is the columns, but the value itself, this value itself, is always looking at this, the width. You understand? So for example, if now I say 200 pixels, right? It means this is the 200 pixels. So we left a lot of space, spaces here, right? So if I give a space and added 200 pixels again, what happened? You see how it works now? Well, we are dealing with columns, right? So if for now I just left it at 200 pixels, it's only what takes all of them, all of the boxes which is inside with 200 pixels, one column. So it means that I just want here means only one column should have 200 pixels. So all the boxes will arrange itself in a one column with what? 200 pixels, right? But if I give a space and added 200 pixels again, it means I want two columns, right?
Yeah.
So two columns with what? With 200, each with 200 pixels. Then if I give another column and say I did 200 pixels, what happened? It gives you what? The same what? Three column, 1, 2, 3. You understand?
Yeah.
But it always arranges itself in a vertical way so that the number of items you have are equally shared or distributed. So in your imagination, you could have what say that why didn't this one comes here? Because if this one comes here, it will be 4 columns, right?
Yeah.
But we said we want 3 columns. So it managed itself to have that 3 columns for us.
Mm.
And so this 1, 2, 3 columns. So it will leave this space because we still have those space there. And it will bring this one here because this one 8, you are going to 9. So this one, if I wanted to add 4 columns, this one would have come here to fill the space. So it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So here, if I said I want another one, columns, what will happen? It will still force itself, arrange itself normally. Look at 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So that is how it works. So this first column, second column, third column, fourth column. Okay, so that is what I wanted you to see. But then let me make it 3 columns. But then if we make it that way, we are using what? Pixels, right?
Yeah.
Which is fixed. That is the first one, which is this one, fixed length. I'm using what? I can also use different lengths. Maybe the first column, I can say that I want 100. I want the first column to be what? 100. You see, it has the width of 100. The second, I can say I want the second to be 300. In the fourth, maybe I can say 400. You see, so first column 100, second column 300, third column 400. Even though we are looking at it this way, but the weight is this from here to here, which is 400, from here to here, which is 300, from here to here, which is 100 pixels. So here we are using just what? The fixed units. But we can also use different units because these units are not relative. They are not good for responsive design, as we discussed the last time, right? So what we have is we can also use percentages, right? So here, instead of using this, I can just clear all of this and say that I want to use percentages. Maybe if I want to have 100%, I can just say the first will have 33%. The second will also have 33%. And the third will also have 33%. Right?
Yeah.
So I'll have the full 100% width. So here is 33, 33, 33. Or if I want, I can say maybe I want here to be 25%. Here can be 50%, the middle one. And the last one can also be 25%. Right? So now I have 100%. Maybe this one is 25, this one is, right?
Yeah.
So that is how it is now. Yeah. So what we have to do now is we use the percentage. We can also use the fraction, right? So look at this. You assume that this one is fully 100%. From here to here is 100%. So whatever fraction that we set, we'll take that. So if here I said one fraction, meaning I want 1 fraction, 2 fraction, and then what? So here, look at what happened. So if I said 1 fraction, 2 fraction, meaning here is what? 1 fraction, this is 2 fraction. So assuming we have 3 fraction here, this one is 3, right? So this one will take 2 of them, and this one will take 1. You understand? So it means that this one takes what? If it is 100%, this one will take 33%, and this one will take double of this 33%. You understand? So if the last one, I also say 1 fraction, is the same thing. This one will take 25, this one will take 50, this one will take 25. You understand?
Yeah.
So this one just same thing as this one, take the first one taking 25, the second one taking 50, and the last one also taking 25. So 25, 50, 25, because this one take 2 fraction from that 100%. That is how also this fraction is works. So normally we tend to use this fraction because it is very well responsive. Understand? So because whatever you add, if you try to squeeze it or you increase it, it always calculates itself based on the fraction that it has. You understand? So it's not like fixed or pixels that we use, which is fixed. But because it's fraction, if it is increasing like this, it normally adjusts itself to force itself to maintain its fraction. If maybe when we increase the length, it is more than 100, maybe it came to 120. This one will also fix itself to have that amount. This one also the same thing. So you ask yourself 120, if you want to have the 1 fraction of 120, this one will take. This one also take one fraction from the 120, and these 2 fractions will also take it from the 120. You understand?
Yeah.
So that is how the fraction also work. We could also have auto, as I explained to you. So assuming that is the same thing as 100%, and we want all of them to have equal share. You can say the first column should have an auto, which is maybe, let's say, 33%. Second one should also have the same thing. So you see, when you make it 2, it means that this first will take 50, second will take 50, right?
Yeah.
So you see that here is taking 50%, here is also taking 50%. So we can also take auto. It means this one is 33%, 33%, 33%. If you go again, we see you have 4 columns, all have equal. So auto is also very responsive because it also works itself as if it is a fraction. You understand? But since you set it auto, whenever you increase or decrease it, it's still equal. All the boxes are equal. Understand? So that is how the auto. So normally just put your mind that the column here that we look at is that each here is what text column. This take the first column, second column, third column, fourth column. If you want only 2 columns, we can delete all of them and leave only 2, meaning we have 2 columns which are the same. Now, if you want to be specific and put a value, we can just say 50%, 50%. You understand? So that is how grid template columns works. We also have this repeat value. So here, instead of you to repeat this, you said this to take maybe what we did the last time. We said the first one will take 25%, second will take 50%, and then the last one will also take 25%, which is 100, right?
Yeah.
But if we don't want to be repeating these numbers, we can just make it once and just say use the repeat value. We say repeat. When you use repeat value, this is how repeat value is. When you write repeat, first of all, you have to tell yourself how many columns do you want this to have. So how many columns do you want us to write in this? 1, 2, or 3. Which column? How many? Tell me.
3.
Okay, 3 columns. So if I write three columns, we write 3 columns, right? And then we give a comma. Then it now tells you that each columns, what sizes are you going to give it to? You understand? So now it is very simple when you are using, even you use this word value. Because you first tell what? Say that you want 3 columns. It knows that you want 3 columns. Now give in each columns how many width. The width do you want? Maybe here you see 1 fraction. 1 fraction means you say each and every one should have what? 33%. So if, for instance, this one that you wrote here, it means that 1 3 times, right? So it means that here it's repeating 3 times, and that 1 fraction here repeats itself 3 times. So you have 3 what columns with the sizes. So here we see 1 fraction. You understand? So now we have 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, which is the repeat here, you said. And each will have, if you are going to calculate based on 100%, each will have 33%. But if you want to be specific, we can also, instead of using the fraction, we can also delete this and say, let's just give any word value. We can say we want each one which we're going to repeat should have 200 pixels. You see how it's even past what? The box or the container. Understand? You see how it is now. So it is one go past the container. So it's easier or it's better to use a fraction. Because if you use a fix, maybe it is what it can go outside the distance. But if you use the fraction, let's say fraction, you see that it's still inside. So it calculates based on the container how many percentage the container has. Then it will share it with these items so that it wouldn't go outside of the box. But here, when we say 200 pixels, because it already knows that this is 200 pixels, it will just go out. You understand? Because 200 pixels is fixed, right?
Yeah.
So instead of that, you can just say 1 fraction. So it will decide how many fraction based on the container size. How many fraction can I divide and still be inside the container without going out? You understand? So if I try to even squeeze it, you see, it doesn't go out of the box. It's still inside the box because you say 1 fraction. So it is going to automatically calculate the width for you. So each width, when you decrease it, maybe if initially this width was what? Let's say 100. When you still squeeze it, it will still maintain itself. Although it is reducing, but it still maintains itself to be inside the box. And sharing it as 1 fraction to all the 3 columns. You see how it is? That is why using the fraction is very important. You understand? Because that one is what? Responsive. We can also use what we call minimum maximum. You understand? Also, this one also works. You can also use this way. And this way, how to use it is also the same thing. Minimum, maximum. For instance, here, we can decide to have something like min, max. So first of all, we can say we want the first column to have some minimum and maximum value. So as it's explained here, 80 pixels, 1 fraction. So it says that in 80 pixels, what do they have? Give me 1 fraction. You mean that the first column will have this. It means at minimum, when I decrease it, minimum means when I'm decreasing this way. That's the minimum. And maximum is when I'm increasing this way, right? So we are combining this. When it is what? At minimum, 80 pixels, give me 1 fraction. You understand? It means that 80 pixels at minimum But when it's at maximum, it means you can easily grow at this. And this is similar to the one we use in flex, that is flex grow and flex shrink. So normally that is why we normally use this. So it will look like, for instance, this one is only for one column. So we can go here and say the second column we want to have 150 pixels. So look at the difference now. So it means that here, how many columns do we have? 2 columns. This is the first column, and this is what? The second column. But the first column has what? Different, this minimum and maximum value, which is 80 pixels minimum, and what? When you are increasing one fraction at maximum. So when you are increasing it, it will still try to stretch itself one fraction based on this, but it will still maintain itself inside the container. So when I'm switch, you see that this one doesn't stretch because its initial width is 150, right? So it is here 150, maintain itself. But this one always grow. So that's where the flex grow works here, right? So we see that we set it to one fraction. So when you're increasing it, you see that it is stretching itself. It's growing. You understand? But I set 80 pixels. It means that when I am at minimum size, when I'm trying to reduce it, when I reduce it, you see I'm reducing it. Just look at the width. This one was 150, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, this was 150. In this one, I said minimum is 80 pixels. So look, I'm going to reduce this to 80 pixels. Look. Yes, look at it. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. You see what is happening. So now, this one now reaches its 80 pixels at minimum. You understand? This 80 pixels that I said is this one now, minimum size, right? That is the mean, that a mean max. Mean is this, and max is this. So mean will take this 80 pixels. You understand? So now it is 80 pixels. Now this second column is maintain is 150. So now that both of them have attained their own main width, they cannot, if I'm going to reduce it, they cannot reduce itself again. Then now since it cannot reduce itself again, it has to go out of the box. So when I try to squeeze it again, it will try to go out of the box. Look at. You see it's going out. Because both of them have gained this gain its minimum, and this also has its own minimum or its own initial value, which is 150. So we have the second column 150, and the first minimum value, which is 80 pixels. So they cannot be inside the box again. They have to go outside. So that's why it's going outside. But then if I'm increasing it, this one already is just 150. But this one, if I'm increasing it, because I set the increasing to one fraction, it almost be inside the box. But it's increasing itself because I said one fraction. So one fraction means just no matter where you are, just calculate based on the container and still fill that position. So it is growing. I understand. So even if I increase it, it's still going to be like that. But that's why it's very, very important. So let's go forward. That is what minimum, maximum value. Understand? Okay, you see now here they wrote auto, having the same 3 columns with the same sizes. Right? If you don't want to use any size, like maybe 20 pixels, you just say auto to give you same size. So you see, we mix it with width. You can say this 80, 200, and auto, you see. So when you set this auto, this one will look at based on the size of the bigger container, and we take it size. You understand? So that is how it works. So here is the fraction again, 1, 1, 1. Here 1, 2, 1. So this is 33, 50, this is 25%, 50%, and this 25%. And this is the repeat one. We want the column to be 3 what? 3 times 1, 2, 3, and we have one fraction. Understand? Here too, the minimum maximum is also here. So here we have 150, 150. So both second column and third column have the same width. But this one is what? One fraction, since it has what? Grow. But if it were to be shrink, it will come here as what? Very small when you shrink it. You understand? So that's what we talk about grid template columns, right? Okay, so the same thing here too is the other one, which is the opposite, which is grid template row, right? See, grid template columns, grid template row. Understand? Okay, so now we've talked about this grid template columns, so and the values. So we can just take this out, or we can even leave it for make it auto, so it would have the same thing. You see the difference. So now let's see. The grid template rule also define the number and what? Height. Right? Height. So now we are looking at each box, each height. We look at each box, each weight, and now you're looking at each box, each height. So instead of that, maybe we can increase the width. But let's see. And also, it's the same thing. It also takes the same values as we did. Fixed length, percentage, units, FR unit, auto. You understand? So look at this row, right? So look at what happened here. So here, if we say 80, 200 pixels, the same thing. So here we say, maybe I have to, okay, I can leave it like that. This one to auto, so that you know we already have the width or the column for this 3 columns. So here we can say the row, the first row, this will have maybe 200 pixels, right? And the second will have maybe, let me see, 8200. Okay, I can make it this 8200. 80 pixels and then 200 pixels, right? Okay, what is happening? Okay. So you see what happened? Maybe you don't see it clearly. Initially, all of the boxes are equal in width, right?
Yeah.
And in height too, they are all equal. No one is bigger than the other, right? So now if you are going to talk about the row, which is this row, and row, we know that it is horizontal, right? But if row is horizontal, when you are going to increase its length, we are looking at what? Height. Here, height. Right?
Yeah.
As I told you, row is height and column is width. Right? So always put this in your mind. If not, it will always confuse you. Just put your mind. Row, we're looking at our heights. Right? Okay, or you can see the value of row is height. See, this row, this what is column. So because here we set it auto, each width are all equal to each other. But now we are looking at the row. So we take each row. This is first row, second row, third row, fourth row. So now here we have 4 rows, right?
Yeah.
So we can say the first row, we are giving it the height of 20 pixels. You see what happened? So from here to here, as we can height, right? I said height. From this to here is 20 pixels for the row, this row, right? Okay. the second row, which is 4, 5, 6, 4, this 4, 5, 5, the second row, you also give it how many? 200 pixels, right?
Yeah.
And the third row, which is this, we give it maybe 100 pixels. This. In the last row, you can give it maybe 10 pixels. Just trying to show you an example. You see how it is, right? But for us to achieve it very clearly, maybe I can just see height, maybe a height of 100 VH, like this, so that you see it clearly, or maybe I can see 80 VH, so that you can see it clearly here. Understand? So I can just clear this out. So it's the same thing. I don't want to make it bigger thing to waste time. I hope you just and you understand. 80 mean the first row. Which is the first row? This. That's the row. This 200 is the second row. This. Right? And the third, we didn't set anything there. So it will remain. Understand? So that is how it is here. So that's why they use 80 and this kind of this thing. Right? I hope you understand now.
Yeah.
Okay. So since you understand two of them, let's see if you can do something about it. So if I want to achieve 3 columns, which property should I use? Grid what?
Template.
Grid template what?
Repeat.
What? Grid
Row.
template. Grid template columns, right?
Yeah.
Then now I set a value. So the value I'm going to set maybe a column. Since I said 3, I can use auto, which will take the first one, auto, which is take the second one. So you see that all of them please be 50%. You can say auto again. I have 3 columns. 1, 2, 3. Right?
Yeah.
Remove the height so that it wouldn't confuse you. You see. And then here I've achieved this with a what? With width. But if I want to achieve column, a row with a height, I just say grid template rows. And for the first row, I can say I want you to have 100 pixels, the first row. The second row, I want you to have 200 pixels. The third row, I want you to have also 120 pixels. And the last row, this, I want you to have maybe 300 pixels. You understand what now we have achieved something, right? So we use what? Columns, which is what? Grid template columns. And then we use what? Row, which is this. So we have 3 by 4. 3, 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 columns, 4 rows. So it has 3 columns, 4 rows. You understand? So it's like an Excel. If you remember how Excel works. So it's like an Excel. So grid template columns, grid template rows. So I hope you understand it clearly.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the time?
10, 12.
10, 12.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's almost an hour, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I think I'll just leave you for today because this one, others, they are not difficult, but I'll just leave it for today so that we can move slowly and then we can catch up later, okay?
Okay.
So just go and look at these two things. I just gave you only two properties. You understand? The display grid, and then you set it what? Template columns or template rows. This. So just go and look at it very clear. So we can meet in the on Monday.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Bye.
Bye bye.